Today, we're going to talk about the developmental state and public policy. The developmental state under political economy is more of a recent topic, but is also very intriguing. So to start with, what are some of the features of the developmental state? So you have a determined developmental elite, which of course is instrumental in pushing for economic growth and development in the developmental state. There is relatively a big degree of state autonomy, but you also have a weak and subordinated civil society, and then also effective management of private economic interests. But then you'd say, call it a disadvantage, is the uneasy mix of repression, poor human rights, legitimacy, and performance. So briefly, that is what characterizes a developmental state. So, there's a required reading by Mann and Berry, 2016, in the New Political Economy to understand more about the developmental state. And how sure are we that Rwanda is developmental? First of all, is the growth record. If you see the next slide, it shows you how Rwanda's been coming, around 1994, the big drop, and then rising thereafter. So that's the first major reason, the growth record. But then you also have the ease of doing business reports by World Bank and many other human development indicators. State revenues that have been rising over the years are some of the reasons scholars would argue that Rwanda is developmental. The political capacity of the RPF, the ruling party in Kigali, is another reason we can say Rwanda is developmental. Public goods provision, you have infrastructure that has been improving over the years, and several other services like health, good place for women to live, according to reports. You have internet provision, and many others. Another good question to ponder would be, is there a potential for failure to the developmental state model? And in this case, looking at the example of Rwanda. So the first question, again, from the literature is that what do the ordinary Hutu think that have been left out of the power circles, out of the major opportunities? So it's one question to reflect about. The other issue is, what about political rivals? Talk of dissident groups, talk of militias in the Congo. What do they think? The other reason would be international condemnation. You have a mix. You have those who see Rwanda as a donor darling and a success story, but you also have those who think that this is a dictatorship. So how does that all play out in this so-called developmental model? So the other issue to look at, talking of whether there is a potential for failure of the model, is the regime's reluctance to tolerate criticism, or what we embed under developmental patrimonialism. How does that come out in the so-called developmental model? What about political exiles, those that have left the country, that are in Europe, in other parts of Africa, and elsewhere? What do they think? And then finally, the issue of demographic pressures, pressure over land and the struggle over resources. So briefly, that gives us a picture of the developmental model and the example of Rwanda.